as I said to Vilna before, when we did this in Dunedin, there were at least several of us. There was a team, so you didn't have to listen to one voice the whole day. So it's me again. There are no other speakers to come in. That's okay. I will try. We've actually discussed a lot of the things already, so I'll go through it as quickly as possible, but still try to pull in the relevant points. So what I've done here, this is actually how we broke it down, and then I've added some more things for the presentation today because the report came out since then. So I put in some of the report comments and some of the some screenshots from the actual exemplars. But what we did in Otago, we just broke it down so that we discussed the difference between not achieved, achieved, merit, excellence type answers for applications, operating systems, file management, and ethical issues. So you can see the step-ups side by side. So the first one that I'm going through is application software. Application software, I remember before the break we were talking about one of the red herrings. I also think that this is a bit of a red herring. Application software refers to software that will help the user perform specific tasks, including but not limited to word processing, communication, keeping a budget.
Excuse me, miss, I'm sorry.
You had all of one. That's my standard line. Didn't you just have a beautiful? So word processing, communication, keeping a budget, presentation, managing data. People felt like that was the definitive list of the only applications that could be discussed, and every one of those should be discussed, whether the students had used any of them or not, I think was the red herring. Not limited to the standard Office applications. So as we've been looking at this morning, applications that they actually used. Doesn't matter. So a programming IDE, anyone, Scratch, GameMaker, if you're using that as part of your course, any sort of graphics packages, 3D modeling, audio editors, whatever you're using as part of your digital information course, that's the best things for the students to discuss, because then they're giving those personal examples and they really know those key features. They're not just looking them up on the internet and saying these are the key features of Publisher, these are the key features of Excel, these are the key features. So again, if you tie it back to what you're doing as part of your internal assessment program, and all of them would be using even different internet browsers, and you can put all of that in there. So that, I think, is key, and that will really help that authenticity issue. And also, this is the thing that the kids really know. Let them shine in this part. They know their applications, and if you've been reinforcing it all throughout the year, as we've talked about in the morning session, through their internal assessments or through homework tasks, they'll know what those key features are. I think identify and describe. Those are words that you should really go over with the students, the difference between identifying and describing. So for Achieved, they have to identify and describe key features of the application software. Identifying by itself is not level 6 of the curriculum, and identifying will not get them to achievement. So identifying is producing lists of things. So just lists, like the key features of Microsoft Word are word art, clip art, mail merge, spell check. Those are identify. And again, that is not level 6, that's about down here at level 3, 4. So that's sort of below. We want them to get up to level 6, so they also have to give a description associated with the identification. And so, again, I know I keep harping back to it, but if you're doing some of those things as part of your internal assessments or helping them with those note-taking documents during the year, they're getting some descriptions of the key features. And to get up to merit, they have to give some purpose statements. So if they're identifying a key feature, such as mail merge, I'll just pick mail merge. So they're identifying a key feature of Microsoft Word is the ability to create a mail merge, and they're describing it. And so a mail merge will let me produce one letter and give that same letter over and over again to multiple recipients without having to retype it. So they're giving a description, and then going up a level when they're giving some more sort of purpose or usefulness. I actually started to allude to that. So this is more efficient because I only have to type the letter one time, and I can produce multiple copies of that. So that's start scaffolding them so that they're giving those deeper understanding, showing that deeper understanding. Again, this is reiteration from this morning, but to demonstrate understanding, use of student voice is essential. That's coming from the NZQA report. So that student voice is, this is how I used it, or this is why I used it. It's relating to them. It's really difficult to demonstrate understanding when they say the key features of Microsoft Word are, even if they give a list with a little bit of a description, they're not really demonstrating that they're understanding what that is used for. So, and then screenshots with their own work, that adds the demonstration of understanding, but also that authenticity. So you know it's coming from them, and the markers will know it's coming from them. So from the NZQA report, the reasons for non-achievement were this providing lists, because that was just identifying and not describing with the operating systems and the application software. Providing brief definitions of application software or lists of outcomes that might be produced. So the other thing is, and without related descriptions of the key features. So a word processor is Microsoft Word, and you can create a letter and a resume and a, text-based document. And then a spreadsheet allows you to perform calculations, and you can make a budget, and accountants might use it. And then that's it. They're just lists. They're sort of identification. So this was an example. This is just a screenshot from the not achieved exemplar, and you can see we're just giving some lists. So types of application software. Word processing software or word processing application software allows you to type letters and essay. Microsoft Word 2003. This is the student's application software section. So there's no identification of key features, no descriptions of key features. It's just lists of the software and a brief sort of definition of what you might be able to produce.
The reason you're saying is identified but did not describe.
Right. Yeah, it says the candidate identifies common application software programs, provides a brief description of the application's use with no related descriptions of the key features of the application. And the criteria of the standard does say identify and describe key features of application software and operating systems. So I think it's okay to do that, but then you need to expand upon that. That's not enough for achieved. Many of our students just begun that section with a short description of application software in general. So that's just leading into showing that they understand what application software is about, and then going on to identify and describe some key features. That was one from one of the girls in Luke's class, I think.
This is not achieved?
No. No, this is identifying. Now we're just going to setting up to going to achieved and merit. So, application software is computer software designed to help users perform tasks. application software is what the user interacts with and can't function without an operating system. So they're already starting to show here that they understand some of that, the interactions, and that application software is different from an operating system software. And they've identified some of those. That was just like an introductory paragraph. And then here we go. This is from some achieved. Key feature is identified and described in relation to how they used it, because the other thing it does say is identify and describe key features of application software and operating systems used to manage information. I think that's the whole STEM. I've memorized it. So query and access is where you basically ask the table a question like, show me all the people age 16 and over, and it will show you all the records that match your criteria. You can use this to find information about the records in your database. So they've given, do you see where they've identified a key feature, a query, and they've described what it does. For the Game Maker program, sprites and objects are used together. The sprite feature allows you to make an image, and the object feature allows you to make a character you can control using the sprite. So those are description type level statements. And then these screenshots. So here they've given a screenshot and they've showed what a sort and a filter is, and given, again, a little bit more. This is an example of a table. It contains all the fields, and click the arrow on these questions. I think we've honed in on them that filters and sorts and queries allow you to get questions. You ask your database questions. You get a menu where you can choose how the database sorts the information selected. So these are very descriptive. You can see that they're more descriptive type statements. They're not totally moving up there into the merit. This is from the Exemplar from Achieved. So again, this student has also given that introductory explanation of what application software is, and you can tell it's written in their own words. So they're saying it's basically everything on the desktop itself. Give some examples. And without application software, it would be just an advanced calculator, and then start saying, this is the software we use, and then they start listing key features and also giving a description. So WordArt is an effective option for headings and has a wide range of font sizes and colors to choose from, and then there's more key features. So there are key features. They've identified what application software is. They've described a bit about application software. Now we've identified some key features and given a description of them. And it says there, if you can't read it, that the candidate has provided a general description of application software, identified some key features of several application software packages relevant to the candidate's schoolwork. Examples which demonstrate understanding are written in the candidate's own voice. And then for merit, so now we're going up to talking about purpose. And from the report, explain the purpose of a range of software applications and related the descriptions of the key features to the purpose. So that's bringing it up another level. So the key features tie in to the purpose of the software, and also the purpose for using that key feature. So why am I using this particular key feature? Why am I using a style? I think some of the examples that I've given here, because the style lets you demonstrate good document design principles, it's more efficient, it's more, all of those things. And they explain how they utilize the key features to enhance, create, or edit their own outcomes, and they're providing descriptive examples or annotated screen captures. These are some, and you can hopefully see the step up. So for my first project, I used two main applications, one of them being Microsoft Access. It has key features that would help me to create and sort my data effectively. Some of the features of Access or queries tables. I use queries the query function to ask questions about my data, and it would return the data that was most appropriate to what I had asked. I used sorts to sort through my data to find the most popular answers to my survey questions and to decide what kind of game I was going to make. So they're relating the key features a lot more to the purpose than in the achieved example where they were just giving a description of the key features. So this is definitely a step up in their reasoning. Used forms to view my data one entry at a time and set it out in a way that was neat and easily viewed. Use filters to find the most appropriate, etc. So again, they're relating the key features to the purpose. During project 2 and 3, I used styles and section breaks. I used styles so that I could have the same heading and subheading formatting without having to change font color size every time I wanted to make a heading. Using section breaks instead of pressing enter until I got to the bottom of the page. That helped me because it meant I could add something to the top, etc. So again, they're relating key features, helping them to the purpose. And they're, some of this with other things, remember these are holistically marked, could be starting up into that justification for their selection of their application. Again, things about surveys are the subheadings and styles, and that help them to demonstrate formatting skills. And this girl has, this is in addition the screenshots and explanations. So Illustrator used to create graphics. It had all the tools I needed, such as pen gradient. Because Illustrator uses vector graphics, it meant I can enlarge the shapes and the words as large as I need, and they won't lose any of their quality. This is something I created, and she's showing that she uses the pen tool to create the shape of the scales, the gradient tool for the color and shadow, and duplicated it to make it look like dragon scales. So she's saying why, purpose, and giving a screenshot that she actually did that and she knows what those tools are for. And this one's from the Exemplar. It's probably not that easy to read up there. I had to the exemplars are all protected, so I just did little screenshots of them. And for this one, the student has annotated the different things that they use within Word, like preset heading function for consistency, bullet points aligned to the left to match up with the text, clear and easy to read fonts. They used the italic and blue color. So they've identified the key features, and then she's, or he, sorry, I always say she from teaching in girls' school, said that why really the purpose of Word and why all of those things made this the best choice. So she's, or he, is bordering on giving some justification. If you look at the whole exemplar, though, it's not really at the overall at the excellence level, because I think that there is no interaction between, or very little on interaction between application software and the operating system, and I'm not sure that there's a lot in there on the file types either. And for excellence, so now the next level up is they have to explain how the application software and the operating system interact and justifying that selection. So they have to do both of those things to get up to excellence in applications. And this is also the excellence criteria for operating systems. So that's the step up for operating systems, is that interaction. So from the report, they've explained a range of examples. So most of them didn't just say the one when I click print. When I click print, the operating system or the application software finds the list of printers and then sends it to the printer and blah, blah, blah. So shows a little bit deeper understanding that there are some other interactions being displayed. Justifying why they chose a software application to, remember this is to perform a task or complete a project, linking the justification to the key features of the application. I think that's the key there. is really linking those key features, what's available in that software that allowed them to better perform their task. Or I suppose you could genericize it to a generic task, but if they're writing it from their own personal experience, you know they're going to write in more detail. And they know why they picked that. So their writing will automatically, I think, move up a level because they really know why they did that. If I am, again, trying to justify why Vilna might pick Python over GameMaker, for example, it's going to be really hard for me to justify picking the Python programming IDE from Vilna's point of view, because maybe I don't actually know that much about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I might not actually know that much about it, or if they're given hypotheticals that they really haven't used, it's really hard for them. Especially remember, this is level 1, and it is level 1, and it's all about those. That's what I said in Otago. Level 1 is all about me. And that's where they're at in their thinking still. They still think in their little world, so why did I pick it? Why do I think it's good to use? They have to have reasons, but that's really probably their level of thinking. And if you look at the old generic technology achievement standards, at level 1 it was, why did they make the choices? They had to give some justification and rationalization for making their choices, but it was more about their decisions. And then at level 2, they were looking at how other people did it and then relating it to their own. And at level 3, it was totally looking at outside technologists and why they make their decisions. So that's the step up, and it's still really that step up that at level 1, why am I making these choices? And also justified the selection of a software application by comparing their choice with alternatives. So that's another way that they can make that justification, linking the justification to the key features. And that was just one, like for example, one student combined the features, purpose, and justification into a cohesive document. One of our students who got excellence, it was all sort of, every app had purpose, justification, key features. Some students had introduced the application with the justification and then went on to the key features. Personal experience was drawn upon, and most of our students attempted this criteria, that's what I'm saying, but the students who earned, achieved, or merit did not attempt to justify the use of an application to relation to their task, writing something like, I chose Word because I know it and it's easy for me to use. So that's an achieve. That's still not a justification. I found this program easy to follow, for it had the right sorts of effects, etc., that I needed to make my game. If I were to use another program such as Scratch, it would not have all the right sorts of features. What are those right sorts of features? They really haven't related them specifically and said, Scratch, as compared to Scratch, GameMaker allows you to have levels, it has better collision detection, or whatever they put in there. So that's just not enough. Students will attempt that justification. So again, that's something I think that you can do in your classroom, is help them to write some justification statements. And you can do that in your internals. You're going to hate me saying that by the end of today. E.g., GameMaker 8 was the most suitable software for my game because GameMaker has an image editor. This was useful. Is a sprite. These are right from student work. I had import. I think it's supposed to be as a sprite. I had import was not quite the image I wanted. I was able to edit, transform, draw on the image. It has precise collision detection. This was useful for me in particular because I had to detect collisions between a robber and police. If the precision checking had not been available, it might have appeared to the player that they'd lose the game when they did not actually touch the police officer. So see, they're giving some real justification for why those key features are important. I was able to import sprite resources. This was helpful because instead of creating all my own sprites in GameMaker, I was able to use freely distributed sprites from sources such as those. The website provides sprites with no copyright, but we're linking that back to ethical issues, and are free for the public to use. So that's getting better into some justification statements. And this is again into that raster, and so used Illustrator. Remember I was saying before, you can say, I used Illustrator because it allows me to create raster graphics, or, you know, it has these key features, it has a pen tool, it has this. But then if we're getting into some justification, because it uses vector instead of raster, I was able to create images on Illustrator, resize them big or small, etc., etc. One function I found useful was the pen. It allowed me to plot 2 lines, move the mouse, curve the line. I use them for this, etc., etc. So she's providing much more of a justification for her selection and relating it to the key features. And this is a big long one, which I won't read to you. This is the one I showed you earlier from my over-the-top girl, but she's putting a lot in there. She's having a really good justification. You're also seeing that she understands that there are different versions for different operating systems. So she's sort of, can you see the level now? Do you see the level on applications from not achieved? We're just identifying, we're listing. Achieved, we're giving some descriptions. Merit, we're starting to link key features to the purpose, and when we're getting up to excellence, you're starting to combine all of those things. You're really justifying the key features, justifying that selection based on what key features it has available, how you could apply those, and some of those students have added other things in, like how that relates to the operating system or ethical issues. And I think holistically, remember that, I think you asked before, how somebody said, how do you mark one against another? I mean, even reading my own students' work now, it's like, how is there, some of them are apples and oranges, but when you're looking at it holistically, the ones who have been able to synthesize a little bit more, those are the ones who are moving up into the excellence level. I think they're able to combine like key features with the purpose, and ethics with key features, and operating systems with the application, so they can look at the bigger picture. And I think you would probably see that in some of your students' work as well. The ones that are operating at an achieved level, they're just able to describe, and they can do all the parts. And I would say all of you are going to go and have 100% achieved after this, because most of your students can, bar not turning it in, probably get through the achieved criteria. This is also, besides justifying it, they also have to have the interaction with the operating system. So this has some justification. It also has some operating system interaction. So application software is important in order for the computer to carry out tasks that the user requires. The operating system runs the application software as it is on its own. The computer can't do much. Oh, I think I've shown you this one before.
You have. I'm just thinking a lot of that there, as it is, Judy, could have come straight off the web. There's nothing there that is actually her bit or his bit or whatever it is. Where they actually related it to their work, unless this was just sort of like that was their introduction to application.
But
okay,
yeah, that was
just go on and do their own.
Yeah,
work.
And there's lots. That was from the girl who wrote all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So this was just
I just saw that.
Right, but actually it is
straight off the web.
But
then
well,
I have to personalise.
Right, yeah.
That's why you.
Yeah, and she has lots. Right. I happen to know, because I know that girl, that is, she just wrote that because
as an opening paragraph.
That's an
And
opening
that's why
paragraph.
that student voice
But-
is so important.
Right. But later, because that's one of the excellence exemplars that I've given. If you look, she's got screenshots of her own work, and I use
saying
this
you
in
need
here.
that student voice to reinforce what she
Excellent.
said.
to do 14 pages.
What she did,
Yeah.
wide margins.
See, Julie, I've got alarm bells ringing, and I wasn't here last year doing it, but I just looked at what our school did. In our school, the brief was that they were writing a report as a guide for the use of computing resources. So they wouldn't have used the eye, and we had very, very able students who did excellence, but there's no way in what the brief is to them. They've told the system and that, but they wouldn't have necessarily used the word I or
They did. If we look at some of the students that we got back who did excellence, they
But
would say this
that's
is
a
what
brief, it doesn't even, that was just.
No, but that's not review. That's what I was saying, that what we can do is we can modify and say, yes, it's like what Julia said, you've got your basic headings, and then you say, and this is what I have done, which is what I would guide you to do. So, I don't know, this is something we'll have to think about, but I think you can still do it.
Oh, it can
Because
be
of
done, but I think.
We didn't do it last year.
No, we
Depending
didn't
on
push
what
it so
teachers
much.
gave their brief to their students, no wonder our excellent students missed out. Because
Yeah.
our brief
We didn't tell them.
We
We use a very similar their own work.
It's literally task programmed.
So we have to do it.
That's what I'm saying, we need to just make sure we emphasise that. Yeah.
I had a very similar thing happen because we had a girl who was very capable and probably I thought she was excellent. But she, I think, when I think back now, she neglected that I bit. And she knew exactly what to do and how to do it, and she knew all this, but she didn't do the I.
With the student voice, this is what you need, is that student
And
voice.
demonstrate
And
her
I
own,
expected her to get excellence
and
and she
demonstrate
didn't.
her own
In
understanding.
fact, I think on the paper it had not achieved at one stage, and that was crossed out and put achieved.
Yeah.
How are we supposed to know about that student voice from last year to last
I
year?
think because the emphasis is demonstrate understanding. I remember telling my kids, you have to show you have understood.
But she
No,
didn't
no, I think
understand.
I
But
can
she
still
thought
show
she
that.
They have
demonstrated
to
it.
show. They have to show they have understood.
That's the
And
one
what these
problem with
ones
those
are doing,
checklists. A student will tick it off and go, I've done this.
Right.
But when
So
you
they
just
don't
teach
really
and look at it,
hear
you
it.
say, no, you haven't. And you have to teach them how to
Now we know,
understand
yeah, so
what
the
you've done this. Yeah, because students will tick it and say, I've done this bit. When you look at it as a teacher, you go, you think you have, but you've left out these things. No, you haven't done them.
But I think we are learning. We learn from what we did last year. And I think in all fairness, because it was the first year, I know the NZQA said they're all going to get the benefit of the doubt. They will give them the benefit, but they will tighten up a bit this year because when I have exemplars, our students work which is important.
And I do think, again, like I said before this morning, two things. Of course, if you've been teaching the technology achievement standards and turning in those portfolio assessments, you kind of,
Advantage.
you probably were at an advantage, well, in thinking, that's how I thought it would be. And also by looking at, again, not making any comments as to the quality, but looking at how that exemplar was set out on NZQA, where they were reporting on what they used, the actual task itself. What did you use to make your recipe book? So I guess I had the understanding in my head that they should be reporting on what they went through when they were creating those things.
We're learning, yeah, but we will have to tweak it.
But I also think demonstrating, it's because it's hard to demonstrate understanding if you're just giving, in-depth understanding, if you're just giving lists and brief descriptions. I don't think it's impossible, but without the eye, it's not impossible. But you still have to do a lot of your own words. And I think for level 1, they don't know. Level 1 students, they're not college students. They're not university students. Sorry, they don't actually know how to write a research type paper and give a definition and then an explanation. Do you know what I'm saying? They're not there yet, where we know if you were to write a research paper at university, or a research paper, you would do the research and then give your own interpretation. Whereas at level 1, if it's more of a research paper or more in the third person, they're just going to give the definition. They're going to give straight, define things and not demonstrate their own understanding because they haven't been taught that yet. They're not at that level of writing.
I think just to also answer that, Carolyn addresses that. I think what came out from the marking in the report is this whole authentic issue. Is because I think NZQA found with the markers that there was a lot of stuff that was done from the internet. And there's a whole lot of stuff. You just download. How do you know that it is their own work? And that's why this has come through now, is we need the student voice.
Except what I'm saying is that it's a little unfair on the kids last year because nowhere in the standard does it say they needed the student voice. So I had really clever kids. If I hadn't seen them doing it themselves, I would have thought they had got it off the internet. Like really able students. They had screenshots, they had carefully explained everything, they used examples, they had the research. They never once said anything about them doing it because they were writing it as a booklet for someone else to pick up and use. So, and if you were writing that, that's right.
As a reference.
That's right. So you never say, when I did my project, I did such and such. But they could have, because that is how they learned it. And so, therefore, they didn't get E's. But it was their work.
But
And
were
so
they?
they wanted their own voice.
But were they justifying why? Were they doing that justification and the compare and contrast stuff at that level? Because even if it wasn't in their own voice, if they did all of that and it was clearly their own writing and not straight off the internet, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't think it's not just the own voice. I am just saying that their own voice lets them probably raise up a level. But if it's clearly screenshots that showed some of their own things and the descriptions were in their own words and not from the internet, that just because it wasn't I did this, it
but if
wouldn't
you
be
write
the difference.
really well, like, and you're an exceptional English student, which these our two boys were, then how does someone know that these boys wrote at a much higher level for everything they did all year than anyone else in year 11 in our groups, our 7 classes. They were much better. Their whole level of language, I would have thought they had copied it. That's what I mean. If I hadn't seen them doing it themselves, they wrote probably at a higher level than I would have written it.
But did they actually satisfy all the criteria?
Yeah.
I mean, I had one that I sent away thinking, oh yeah, this is an E. Had that in on cheap, I've sent it back to them. It's got to be an A and nothing else.
Yeah, mine
And I'm still waiting. I sent it in February, end of April, and I still haven't got it back. She was high level. And some of the kids that were bottom of the class got A's.
Yeah, I can't
believe
understand
it.
I set mine and I've got it back and they said, no, you still haven't achieved. I've got a copy of the marking scheme, I've gone through and looked, I've sent it, I've got a person, a technology moderator to check it. And they said, well, they're not going to change it now, but I just cannot believe that she's got everything.
It's got to be an A.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
very similar to my one, which I'm
And it's
obviously
not
going to get
cheating.
again.
So, I don't know.
They are taking a long time to come back, though. I think because I had one of my students at level 2 resend her portfolio, and she just got it back, and I know she sent it off the first week. So I'm wondering
You see that, I sent mine via the principal's nominee. I wanted to know it, and
I think the beauty of today, though, is that I know, I'm sorry, I can't speak for anyone else, but I know my assessment that I gave the students wasn't good enough. Because I did exactly what you guys have done. I got them to produce an information booklet for new Year 9 students. So they would never have mentioned I. They would say, this is an example of a Word document which includes blah, blah, blah. They would have never said, I chose this because.
Right.
And so I now know that my task wasn't good enough.
And even
but I
if
have to say, it was a task that was generated. I didn't generate it. It was a group tasks that we all did. So, what worries me is around the country, we've got all of these people that, last year were on the wrong track and disadvantaged our students. But that's the beauty of today. We now know that they must base it on their own knowledge about the tasks that they have done.
And even in that guide, if they probably would have said, if you are to do if your teacher assigns you a word processing document, the best software selection might be Word because it has blah, 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 and they could at least have, it's probably that they hadn't put in those justification selections, or when you're saving something to put on the Moodle, you should save it as a
context of what it is, the task. For instance, the Year 9 document.
right. So I would say that it probably, I'm just assuming that, like, if they had added in those bits of, you should save it as a certain type of file when you're making this to upload onto the Moodle so that it preserves your authenticity and so it looks right for the teacher. Those are probably the things that still, even if they didn't say I did it this way,
Would have shown understanding.
but would have brought it up perhaps a level.
I had some come back that they were check marking, I don't know, but they started out as an M and came back as an achieved. Like the marker, they actually got an M on it, crossed out, and initial change to an M. I don't know.
I had that.
In a learning curve where everybody
Not
had
achieved, then I had achieved.
Makes feeling better. The level 2 girl that turned mine in, I thought she was excellent, and she got a not achieved, and she would have been my top student. I thought, how did she was the top student at level 2, and she got not achieved on her level 2 portfolio, and I thought, no. And I was looking, and everybody else had achieved, and it came back as a merit. So,
So it does happen.
it does happen, because I was surprised. I looked at it and I read it again. I did the same thing. I read it. I'm sure she's more than talked about all of these things in hers, and the other ones were coming back as achieved. And I thought, she's gone way beyond. How does she get a not achieved?
Were there any notes written on it?
No, but I was thinking the same thing. Her level of writing was so high, they might have thought that she just copied and pasted some of the things. But I know her.
But they
I
don't.
know her.
The thing is, if that's the case, if that's what they think because the level of writing is so high, then they need to make those comments so that you can, as a teacher, can say, well, no, I worked with her, I've done, this is how she wrote, etc. I mean,
But-
there's absolutely nothing came back.
But I do think that's going back to the whole I thing, or the whole demonstrating understanding. Even if they have the Year 9 guide, or if they have just a research report on operating systems, as long as, not operating system, but operating systems seems to be the thing that they want to copy and paste. If they have that blurb out of Wikipedia, and then, so this means, and they say it in their own words, because there's got to be a way that the markers can know that it's their own understanding. And it isn't, if you read the because I read carefully through that whole technology report, and it's pretty common, that comment across all of them in the programming one, the programming, or the computer science, in the graphics, the understanding design elements, is that what it was, or something like that? I can't remember the name of it. But there was a common theme across all of them, as not demonstrating understanding by relating it to some sort of a context. So I think that was common across all of them. Okay. File management, structuring, naming, and storing files. Again, file management procedures, it's probably good for them to identify their own practice, describe their own practice, using student voice, screenshots of their own work. Oh, by the way, I did write to NZQA last year. In the middle of the year, I did write to them and say, can we have some better exemplars for these externals up? I didn't get anywhere. Thought I'd put that in there. I did try. Here we go. Achieved. I structured my home drive by making a folder for each subject. Inside the folders, I created subfolders that I named based on the topic. My actual documents I named with the date first and then the name. Ways to compress files. That is our describing. So to compress file, you use a program called WinZip. I use this to make my documents smaller. I can send them through email. The person that receives the email can then open WinZip on their computer and convert the WinZip file back to its original size. So it's a description about what it is it achieved. Managing threats to data, description. To reduce threats to data, save my work to my home drive, which has a password to protect my work from other people access it. I also have antivirus program to prevent, detect, and remove unwanted viruses. It will detect them and kill them. I like that. It will kill them. So they're describing ways in which they manage those threats, and again, not just identifying a list of threats to data, like you said on that other one. You could get a list of threats to data, but then how did they manage them? So, purpose, this is where the purpose, it does say purpose and conventions of file management procedures and use of storage devices. So it's important to manage your files and folders efficiently. So now we're saying sort of the conventions and the purpose so that you can find and access them quickly and without hassles, naming your documents under the year they were made, or with the year and the month and the date under a dash. Example, this convention makes it more efficient for you to find your documents as they are then listed from oldest to newest. So it's discussing an actual purpose of a convention, and that's why that's more than I created a folder in my home drive and saved everything into my home folder. And of course, and this is from that other one was from another school. I think that maybe was one of Mary's examples. This is the girl who has this is the long one, but you can see that this is her own wording, and she isn't actually saying this isn't. There is there's some screenshots of a messy desktop and a clean desktop in that, but file management, just like other management of your locker, your bedroom, for example, without any management, they're very messy, untidy, it takes a long time to find anything. You may accidentally get rid of something because you forgot it was there. And it's annoying when you have similar objects like 2 socks or textbooks. They're in separate locations. Well, file management is no different, and here are some good practices. So, and she's given some good practices there, and then she goes on and gives some screenshots of a messy desktop and poorly named files, so you can tell that it's hers. And
she's given purpose.
Yeah. This is all merit, because for file management, the merit is like the purpose of of the conventions and the conventions. So here you're just identifying and describing file management procedures at achieved, and then at merit you're giving purpose and the purpose and the convention. So why is that helpful? And
so that'll be like if you're doing web design. Here's your pages, here's your assets, here's your images, and being able to show why the purpose, why they're all not together.
Yes, and that's what this screenshot here, that girl talked about naming her sprites and having them in folders like that, sprites, rooms, sounds, and exactly, if you did it for web design and you showed that you're going to have all your images here, all your assets here, and that you don't name them with spaces because that will make it choke when you're uploading it to the web or whatever, that's the merit answer. Just saying, I organized all my files for my web page in different folders. You might say, you know, that might be the achieved,
Yeah.
so that they're easy to find or something. But you're not. We know what's a convention on the web that they can talk about.
Index.
Yeah.
Index.html
Yeah.
three-letter code possibly addresses it.
Right, and not having spaces in your file names or keeping things all
And
lowercase.
Lowercase, that's it. Yeah.
So those are all conventions that they can talk about that would bring them up to
Cool.
merit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where this is, and she's given this sort of a merit level screenshot and explanation here. And you can just tell by the screenshot that she's stuck to a naming convention and she has things organized. And she's already said there that she knew that there would have issues when programming and choosing certain sprites. For example, the wrong sprite for a certain object. Use my alien sprite for a spaceman object. So if she hadn't named them right, if they were all just sprite 1, sprite 2, sprite 3, she would not know in her programming code which one to change it to when the alien hit the spaceman, then it needs to turn it into squashed alien or whatever it is. She wouldn't know that. File compression. So this is giving a little bit more about the convention. So some people prefer to email their work, but find it slow to send a file. If it's too large, you can zip them, which is when you can enter your documents into zip and compress them. This is faster. When you receive an email, that's about the same as the beginning one, but then we go into, for images, a convention is to limit the file size through the settings of the file type before you save it, e.g. using a JPEG instead of a bitmap will make your file smaller. So she's starting to go into a purpose and also a convention. Or he. I don't even know where this came from. Passwords. Passwords are provided managing threats to data. So this is also giving passwords instead of just saying, I put passwords on, you know, I manage my threat by putting passwords onto my files. This is so nobody can access that account but themselves. This is to keep personal information secured because you could have your address saved or phone number. People are asked to keep their passwords to themselves and to make their passwords something that people wouldn't guess, such as birth dates or names, as that could put you at risk of being hacked. So that's much more of giving purpose and convention. And I was just thinking, sorry, I'm harping back, because Mary could have chimed in here, Mary Gill. I think this might have been from one of her students, but I know that she had students achieve at all levels, and they did write it as a very third-person report, hers, although she said that she's going to change it and bring in more of first person for this year, but
So I'm just thinking again, if I read that paragraph, that could have come straight off the internet.
Right.
There's nothing to say that it is the book.
right.
So
But
That's the big thing. Is
Yes.
we're dealing with digital kids who will everything. You'll find out Google,
Right.
Google.
Right.
So
So-
how do we know that they've actually understood?
So
that
would the
context
kid
is
go
about?
through and say, for example, I have gone through and made sure
Right.
my password is a secure
Right.
password
Mm.
because I've used capital letters, lowercase.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And most of these, I mean, these are just like paragraphs taken out of context to show the level of thought, I guess. And most of those would probably have a screenshot to back them up with an example. But it is better, you're right, Vilna, it's still better to have them say, for example, this means that
Yeah.
my password has all, you know, one uppercase letter and a number or something like that, or and I always log off at the end of the day to make sure, because other students are coming into the computer lab.
Could they talk about one of the threats to their data about being being other people accessing their Facebook profile?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I think
so-
there is a Facebook something in here that Justin put in. It was about, well, it was an ethical issue and yeah,
This
threats
huge
and having,
ACC thing was an
yeah.
ethical issue, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I
To
don't
what?
know.
Yeah.
You know, with all the ACC documents,
Yeah.
receipts,
Yes.
it's a
Yeah.
huge ethical issue. So, you know,
storage devices, and this is again just talking about different and why you would, the purpose of picking storage.
Yeah.
You cannot always trust your USB. It could break down at every time. Many students save their work to their school drive. And it's saying students, so this one is probably not, you can tell just from here, it's probably not from the internet.
Yeah.
They also save a copy of their work to the USB, and when they get home, they transfer their files to a portable hard drive that they have. The portable hard drive is much larger than a USB and more reliable. This method makes sure you never lose that. You never lose
So
your
one of the things they can talk about now is like Dropbox, Google
Right.
Drive, Mega Upload, and the issues of
Yes.
we don't actually know if it's going to be taken offline at any point in time.
Managing threats. This one is all about, you know, physical damage. Laptops are easy to drop. Computers can have things spilt on them. Mobile phones are similar, can be misplaced. Even if you're most cautious, natural disasters happen. So the key here isn't so much preventing physical damage, which can be in many cases inevitable, but to be prepared. This means backups. Backing up your files is essential, and there's a whole thing about backing up. And it says you can even save it on your webmail, and then you can have it from internet access.
So this one's good because when it's got overall wireless, I personally think
Yes.
portable hard drives are the best for backing up. So they've started putting those I statements in. And
Right. See, I love this. But you may, on the other hand, be the sort of person to always lose small objects or be too oblivious to them when vacuuming. So keep a few handy, I'd say 2 or 3. Most ideally, a portable hard drive. Yes.
my favourite is an earthquake could destroy
I
all the
know.
computers you own.
I did read that last night when I was
Could
going
possibly
through this.
be
and
a
I thought-
Christchurch student.
And then for the file types, so that's all merit, and then it's the justifying, comparing and contrasting the use of file types for different purposes. So when I was writing my report, I used a doc file as it could be opened in Microsoft Word where I could edit it, change the fonts. However, in order for the fonts and formatting in the document to stay the same, when I sent it to my teacher for marking, I saved it and uploaded it to the Moodle as a PDF. And that's where I'm saying in that Year 9 guide, you could say, before uploading to the Moodle, you need to save it as a PDF for marking. Or I was saying, we were discussing paper cut. We have paper cut at our school, and we've got
Yeah.
internet printing now because of our laptops.
Yep.
So they have to save it as a PDF to do it. So they, in the Year 9 guide, if you have that, you must save your work as a PDF to preserve it before you send it. So here we go. That way, the teacher would see it exactly the way I wrote it, without all the fonts changing and messing up my report. This is from the NZQA. It's important to know, so this one has a little bit more, it's important to know what file type you're working with and to know what version of the program will be needed to open. This is because often you share files with other users and you need to know what program to use when opening the file. During the creation process, I use both edited files and flattened files. You can often tell if your file is editable or flattened by the file type. An editable file is one you change as opposed to flattened, which you can read only. And so she's given a lot of comparing and contrasting of the file types for different purposes. People flatten their files so that the content on it cannot be changed. It looks exactly like they did. This is especially important when, and this has some embedded operating system. Between a Windows operating system and a Mac, as often the formatting will change slightly, and this can change the look of a document or an image. So, ethical issues. Now, ethical issues are strictly at achieved. They need to be addressed for achieved. There's no step up to merit or excellence with ethical issues. They just have to be there for achieved. I think students wrote more and more. The merit and excellence students probably wrote more, but there's not a step up. They're just there. Once again, it's probably better if they relate the issues to their own work for authenticity and demonstration. The section is not about quoting the copyright and the privacy law. And if you look at the NZQA report. This is from one of my students on copyright. So to find the right sprites, background, sound effects, titles, etc., I had to search for a website that allowed me to use their sprites. For example, I used this website. She's put a screenshot, and then you can see she's given a, as you can see above, this rightly says, because it says she got a copy of their license, that this is an online sharing service where users share free public domain vector clip arts or share public domain photos. If, for example, this website said the images on this page was copyrighted, then I would have no right to download it because that is a form of cheating or copying someone else's work. So that's, she understands that she needs to look for, Creative Commons or...
Does she talk about Creative Commons or different types of
no,
licenses?
I don't know.
Okay.
Just showing how you could show copyright.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just thinking this is related to one of those old unit standards. Remember 2781?
Yeah.
Was the same sort of things. And I remember when I was marking those year 12, all they would do is just list the whole copyright law, and I'd say, no, you haven't explained that you understand what.
Okay.
So another way to look at it would be they could, if they did have a booklet as such, that they could say how they would go about copywriting it for themselves. What is the process?
And why?
Why would they do this?
Yeah. So that
I need to do this.
What Creative Commons licenses could I use for this, and being able to explain the 4 different types of Creative Commons?
And that's really cool too. I saw somebody wrote a task, maybe it's even Melinda Stevenson shared something with me for year 10, and she's having them design something in year 10 for digital media and share it and release it under Creative Commons. So that just teaches them about, public domain and Creative Commons. I knew there was something in here. I think maybe Justin put this in here, Justin from the Tuggo Girls. So privacy, it's illegal to hack somebody's Facebook because everybody has the right to have their personal information protected. That is why we all get provided with a password. It's also illegal for someone to post information or photos of somebody else without their permission. So they're starting to talk about those issues. So it's, if that's part of your program, or they can discuss Facebook.
And once again, they would say, if in my project I took photos of my friends, I would have to get them to sign that it was okay for me to use them.
And last year, when you were saying starting at lower down, with year 9, the sports coordinator asked if we would create a little coach's handbook, and I had my year 9s do that. And I made them run around and get sign-off statements from all the photos that they had taken from we have a shared drive with all our sports photos from the year, and then they could pick from those. But then I said, you have to go and get all the students in there to have their permission that they don't mind if you publish it, because it's going out to other coaches around Otago, and they might not want that picture of them going over the high jump on sports day or whatever. So if you can start some of that earlier on. Do we really have to? Yes. This is appropriateness, because there's that other thing, the appropriate, showing that the appropriateness of material in its context. That's another example they give in the explanatory note. And privacy. So this student has said, another important ethical issue I had to consider was whether or not elements in my game would offend anybody. These included things like background images, sprites, name. I easily overcame this by querying my stakeholders and checking with them about it. If they decided something was offensive, I either changed it or removed it completely. This is that we had them tick off. Oh no, that's last. When I was creating my survey, I also asked about whether gang violence was offensive. None of my final stakeholders had a problem with gang violence. Privacy was also another important I needed to address. I overcame this by adding a question addressing privacy on the survey, whether or not they wanted information. And it says if they did want to remain anonymous, I wouldn't use their name. So they thought about it. And again, all of these are just achieved because it's just achieved for ethical issues. But instead of, like Vilna said, having copy and paste of the privacy law and the copyright law,
They've got to apply it.
is not demonstrating understanding of ethical issues related to information management.
See, I personally, with my experience and the non-prior knowledge that my students have, I could see them doing this at level 2, not dealing with this particularly well at level 1.
But they could, you mean the whole thing or just the ethical issues?
Probably the whole thing, I think. If I'm honest about it, probably the whole thing, because I do we've got them 3 hours a week for a term, and then they choose to do it at year 10, and we have 10. And then it increases in year 11. So there is no prior knowledge, and there is no.
However, I do think that this is fundamental knowledge that every new relevant student should have. I think there's a lot of what I would call computer consumers, and they're not really good consumers. So this to me is essential knowledge for them to have. That you don't just download the latest movie, you don't just do this, you don't just share that. So to me it is essential knowledge for them to have. Maybe you won't assess it.
No, I quite agree. I totally agree with you, but I just don't think that my students are at this level yet.
Yeah. Depends what they're also getting up to in primary schools, because I think we are getting a lot more UNICEF students coming through in 9 and 10. I know that we have had quite a lot with our feeder schools, and we just see what they're doing, and then they come here and we've had surveys, they've done this, they've done that, they've done the next thing. Some haven't, some have. So you're getting a real mixed bag that comes. Yeah. But I think it's an issue that they have quite a lot.
And I think if you look, have you read through the achieved and the merit example, the annotated exemplar yet? From NZQA, the new ones that were just posted from
One
this
with
year's.
the muscles on it?
No. That's on here. I've downloaded it. I've showed some snippets. If you look at the achieved and the merit, I think they're very achievable. Yes.
Yeah.
And I put them in the file there, and they've got annotations as to why they're at achieved and merit. So look at those. Some of this that I'm showing of some of my over-the-top girls, ignore that, as you know, for right now. And I do think, because I looked at those and I've downloaded them, and they're not the muscles one, not the Kai from the Coast. Yeah. Those annotated exemplars didn't even make sense to me personally, I have to say. But these make sense. How to cover the topic. This is about the get them thinking earlier in the year. This is really good to tie into digital media. So if you're doing digital media, the ethical issues. I know. Have you seen Craig Jeffries from Wakatipu High School on the list quite a bit?
Yeah.
And so I think his approach was he used like the key features. He tied more into digital information. He tied the ethical issues a lot into digital media. So he looked at parts of it and tied them specifically into different parts, different strands. Start with the class discussion about students' understandings. Where are they? I would say most of them, when we do start talking about it, oh really, I can't share all of my iTunes with my friend and jailbreak my iPod and all of that. So, see where they're at. This is a good one to break into some homework tasks. Look at strategies that the student could use. A directly referenced quote in relating. So this is it. If they do have a directly referenced quote, how could they then say, so this means, or the application of this. If you want to use that, then we're actually going to have to teach them it. I don't think they do that I know they don't do that at level 1 English. It's really frustrating. In their English classes, they don't learn how to properly reference a source or interpret a source. It's a bit, that's why I did this, because it's a little bit easier. Note, the students don't know how to reference. It's up to us to make sure they do it correctly. This is something that Justin has written, but in Microsoft Word, it lets you make the inline citations, and you can pick APA, or you can pick APA or MLA style, and it'll make the bibliography for you. It's a little feature in Microsoft Word, and it is really easy. I use that all the time now.
Where is it?
It's just under the References tab, Insert Citation, and so right where they are, they just click and you say Insert Citation, and it can be one of the bracketed ones like APA style, or it can be a little footnote, and it makes the footnote. It brings up a template for them to fill in. If it's a website, they put in the author and the name of the website and the URL.
Done and dusted.
Done and dusted.
And that's for a quote.
And that's for a quote. And then they can go on, but to demonstrate understanding, then they still have to say what it means.
But would you still get them to put that in their bibliography?
Yeah, and then they still have
But
that.
just exactly the same.
Yeah. And it will build the bibliography. So if you have them do this inline citation, and they've been putting it in all along, and then at the end, it builds their bibliography for them. And that's what students don't want to do. Or their bibliography is Google. Or a list of websites. Yeah, Google Images with that big long. So this actually builds a proper bibliography, and that helps them for other subjects. And you can use that as one of your key features in Microsoft Word. So when you're teaching those key features. So yes, I would definitely add that into your Microsoft Word teaching. And it does say in the new standard for this year, if you've read the new updated, that's not the new standard, the new assessment specifications for 2012, it does say that any referenced material has to be referenced at the point of insertion. And that's
the new conditions of assessment.
Yes, that's new conditions of assessment. It's for all of those technology externals, and it's because of this exact problem, Vilna, that you were saying, that you can't know if it was, or where it was copied from, or their own writing, especially if it's some really high level language. So if they do have references at the point of insertion, and then they've gone on to do a little bit of an explanation, that's been added into the conditions of assessment.
So class notes that you've given them, do they just say that, or
Yeah, they can put that in, and a lot of them would put in class notes, but most of them have used their own internals, I think. But they can put in that for, class notes, and then their documents. Okay. I have one more, PowerPointing to death, death by PowerPoint. This one's kind of important, and I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't have left it, but it's the operating systems. It probably won't be as onerous now because we get it. And I'm probably saying the same thing. Here's from the NZQA report, and this is what I was talking about before. Candidates were not advantaged by defining every type of operating system as provided in the example. Candidates who define each type of operating system often relied heavily on internet sources intended to provide verbatim definitions with no attempt at describing an operating system's key features or explaining the purpose in their own words. Effective reports focused on describing the key features and explaining the purpose of the operating systems that the candidates were familiar with using in their classwork or at home. So they don't need to they were not advantaged by going through multitasking, by every single one, real-time operating systems. Again, identify and describe describe, so not just a list of key features, like it's not just the list of, it allows you to multitask, launch an application, manage your files. That's just identifying. We need the describe. Provide examples of how they interact with the operating system and key features, and access to complete their day-to-day computer tasks. From the report, this is again, they just identified and not described or provided a rote definition of operating systems without related descriptions of the key features. This is not achieved. So the operating system for a computer is a program that helps the computer to interpret the commands given by the user. It also manages all the data that the user is working and manages all the input. Common types of operating systems are Windows 7, Windows Vista. Candidate identifies common operating systems and provides a limited definition of an OS, but does not describe key features of an operating system. I think that was the, if you look, this is the not achieved exemplar. That's it on the operating system. So, not really any description of key features there. It's just sort of list, identify. Identify, achieved. The tasks of the operating system are. Now, again, this is a list, but the loading and running of applications so that the user can use it without any hassle. Track of memory space, I think maybe keeping track of memory space so that the user knows when they are close to using all the memory in their computer. So it's giving more of a description. Manage password security is important because you want to keep your computer safe from anyone who wants to get it. For example, I have a password for my school account so that I can only access my account and no one else, same with my internet. Allow hardware to communicate with software to load applications and other sorts of programs the user would like to use. Move data to and from the hard drive. This is from that achieved, the student of mine that got marked achieved. With other storage devices such as USB, that helped me specifically when it came to shifting my data of projects from my Windows to my Mac operating system. So you can kind of see they're identifying, they're doing a bit of description, you know they're relating it to how they're using it. File management, and that's from, that could have been just a generic list, but then she's taken that and then said how, it described it and said how she's used that. And multitasking, that was just a little bit, again, it allows you to be able to have more than one document open at a time, allowing you to access more than one website if you're researching. For example, if I had to be on my emails and send a link or find some information at the same time, the computer will multitask to let me go onto more than one application to do that. To do what you need to do. Anyway, but you can tell that she understands that multitasking means that you could have more than one thing open at the same time and go back and forth. This is from the NZQA achieved exemplar. So it's saying about the operating system at the school, giving a description. And again, it's written in the student's voice. You can kind of tell an operating system is software that supports controls like XK. File manipulation is doing things like opening previously saved documents or saving a document. Another example of file manipulation is naming files or renaming them to suit whatever the file is about. File manipulation is also when you delete files. And then she's talked about managing input. So the not achieved student would just be listing some of these, and then here we're giving a description, and you can tell that this is how her understanding or his understanding is.
Yeah, that's from my song.
Her. Do you recognise it? Did you know that it was?
Where they blanked out everything, they left MGC.
Oh. Did you know it was on there?
I did when I got
because I saw the MGC.
Demonstrate.
Unfortunately, the one where they don't achieve is also one of mine.
Do you see the difference? That's good. From explaining the purpose of operating systems to make, I just have, since you're here and they're up there, would you have known that when the students submitted the report? Does that make sense? Based on the students
That they wouldn't have passed it.
yeah, the one.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I went round and looked like we do and sort of discussed things with them, etc. But some girls, they look like they're doing something and they're not. And
They
last year I had 2 really big classes, and so I maybe didn't get around to that person enough
Right.
to see. Yeah.
Right. I'm just wondering, from it would it have surprised you?
But if I
that,
had seen it,
right, you would have
but
said.
what surprised me is I had like Adrian an excellent all year who didn't achieve, and then some of these ones where I felt like if I'd sat and done it for them they'd still fail. They got achieved. So
Okay. In depth. Explain the purpose of an operating system and related the purpose. This is the exact same thing as the application software. Explain how they utilized an operating system's key features in their daily work by providing descriptive examples or annotated screen captures.
Judy, what sort of comes to mind here is I think a lot of what the kids do, they do automatically. And what we've now got to do is to pull that out of their heads and say, tell me what you're doing. I want to do this. I said, no, but show me, document what you do.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the hard thing.
And the other thing is, especially with operating systems, I bet, unless you explicitly teach some of these things, I know with my year 11s, they have no idea what the operating system is actually doing versus they know how to do it.
Yeah, they use it all the time.
They use it all the time.
But to explain
They can't
it,
tell the difference between what the operating system is doing and what the application is
Right.
doing, because to them it's all the same.
It's my computer. My computer is doing it.
Exactly.
they're consumers.
And how many adults, how many teachers in your school say, I don't know where I saved that, Word saved it. Yeah, Word saved it for me. And that's what, so many of my teachers, I don't know where it was, Word saved it. You're like, no, Word didn't save it. It's wherever Word saved it. And I would say, but you're right. They actually know how to manipulate their operating system, but they don't know that it's the operating system that's doing it, and they don't realize. And so I do think it's key. And if they're going to do any sort of programming, if they're going to do any, or even web development, whatever it is, they have to think, what operating system am I making this thing for, and what are the differences? So it is pretty fundamental, but I don't think this is the area that they don't implicitly know.
No,
You have to say, look, I just did this. This is what shows up when I left click, because the operating system has reacted to the left click and has opened the left click. An operating system does this to all programs and softwares that you would like to open. This is one of my students who received a merit. I put this in here because if you read this, her grammar and spelling and things, she's not one of my high students there, and I would have to say, when I read her first draft, I did say, personalize this, explain, I gave it back and said, doesn't sound like you understand an operating system. And she went back, and I remember her sitting in class yelling out, going, I know, it's like the brain. And that appeared in here. It's like the operating system is like the brain for a human, but a computer. When the mouse is clicked, etc., the operating system has many responsibilities and powers. Responsibilities and powers, because it has to make sure that different programs and softwares running at the same time do not interfere with one another. So I thought that was actually, she's understanding that whole concept of multitasking. E.g. having the internet and Microsoft open. The operating system is also responsible for securities. Do a little securities training. Making sure unauthorized users do not access the system and steal your work. So she was able to then get this into her own words and demonstrate her own understanding from a generic list of key features of an operating system, and that was able to bring her up to merit. And she had below this, I know she had a whole list, and they were all her own examples of, this is some things that the operating system lets you do, blah, 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 blah.
It's the second paragraph that describes the differences.
This, I have in here, Merit, this is actually, I don't want to be misleading, but this is from an excellence exemplar. I think it might be that one girl's. But it's still the purpose. And the operating system is managing a piece of software. Its job is to manage the overall function and communicate with the hardware devices connected to computers. Your application software does not communicate with your computer. No, this is the operating system. For example, we have that same one. Often we take advantage of the operating system's features without even realizing it. She goes in and she's talking about GUI and command line operating system and the tasks that they perform, but she's gone into a little bit that it's good sort of purposing thing. It's not, you can see here, this part of it isn't the I statement, but it's written in sort of her own language and not the typical definition straight off of Wikipedia. And I didn't do the excellence criteria because the excellence criteria for operating systems is in the application bit. It's the same. It's that interaction between operating systems and application software. That goes together. So they really need to discuss how the OS and the apps interact. So it can be things like making sure that that application runs on that particular operating system, that the user launches the application by clicking on the icon and then it finds that and loads it, the saving, the printers.
Also, if they add a new device in, it won't work unless it has the driver for it, which is something the operating system needs.
I think, I don't know what, it might be in that one of those excellence exemplars, but I was very pleased because I think she was the only one that actually listened to me on this. But we were talking about why doesn't every application know about every piece of hardware available? Why is that the operating system's job? And, you know, about the bloated code. I said, you know, if Microsoft Word had to know about every type of printer available, and then every time a new printer became available, it had to know about more printers that were available, and also that Adobe Photoshop had to know about every printer available. So it's your operating system's job to keep track of the hardware that's available, and then your app talks. So we were discussing that, and that's a good way that they can understand.
That makes sense.
Yeah, the interaction between the application and the operating system, and then managing the hardware. So there we go. There we go. PowerPointed to death.
Sorry, I know some people have to rush off. We've still got time for questions because I've got another 10 minutes before I have to take Julie to the airport. But I did want to say thank you, Julie, for talking non-stop almost for 5.5 hours and for sharing what you have shared with us today and being generous with all of that. So thank you very much for giving up a day, and I know your folks are out from the US flying back tomorrow, and Julie still came today, so thank you very much.